Mark Tatum, Deputy Commissioner and COO of the National Basketball Association.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Dr. Richard Lapchick, thanks for being with us here on R&R on Sports.
Thank you for having me.
Civil rights icon, Dr. Edwards, how are you today?
I'm doing a heck of a lot better than I deserve, I'll tell you that.
Sports commentator, Scoop Jackson.
Good to be back on with you all.
Ian Griffey Jr., how are you today, sir?
I'm good. How about you guys?
It's R&R on Sports.
R&R on Sports.
Fine pass by Elliott Perry and is finished by Wesley Person. Elliott Perry pulls up and hits Perry penetrating in. The Suns very fortunate they have an Elliott Perry to fill in with Kevin Johnson out. Elliott Perry. And it's good! It's good! It's over! And the Suns win the game! The Suns win the game! That's unbelievable finish!
Hello, world.
We're back!
There you go with that falsetto stuff again, man. R&R is back in the house. How y'all doing? I'm Howard Robertson.
I'm Larry Robinson.
And yet again,
One more
back
game,
on your
brother.
radio, talking about all the latest. I mean, the stuff, we get deep, don't we?
Oh, all the time,
Don't we get
brother.
deep?
Oh, we better get deeper than the deep
We don't
blue
mess with
sea.
no scores and that. Yeah, you
Nah,
can get that
no,
on
God.
28 other shows,
I'm telling you,
man.
be original.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be the uncola.
There you go. There you go. We've got yet another fantastic show for you today on R&R on Sports. We're going to talk about L.A. as in life after.
Life after, brother.
And this is life after a life in professional sports. But Larry, you know what? What it brings me in the mind of is this reality. There are so many young professional athletes that do not have the wisdom in their household of a father or a grandfather as we did,
Right.
or an uncle or somebody, some prominent male figure in their lives that has some wisdom about life in general.
Right.
So when we say life after professional sports, that's life that's life
Right.
in general.
Right.
But that's a different kind of life because these guys have made a whole lot of money and have had all kind of adulation and have been exposed to all kinds of different things.
Absolutely.
By this time.
One of the things I think about is what would it be like to be a 19, 20-year-old and you've just been, you just signed a $100 million contract.
Okay.
$80 million
Okay.
contract.
Folks falling all out, trying
Right.
to get up on you.
Right.
You're not married yet, let's say.
Right. So
And,
you're doing a lot of things and you're being less frugal.
How would it have been for you?
Well, I'd have been me being crazy because let me tell you, I left college with a $29,600
Bill.
job. No,
Oh,
that
job,
was my job.
Oh,
that was my
excuse
job.
me.
That was my first job out of
Okay,
college.
okay.
And I can tell you, I bought everything, man. There used to be a store called Circuit City. They knew me by first name, bro. They knew me by first. I bought
You took your 30K
equipment.
gig and went to Circuit City and
Oh
went crazy,
man,
lost your
first
mind.
check, bro. First check. It was like I'm making sure I never again miss out on anything that I missed out on as a kid.
That's
I bought the 6-disc Onkyo changer. I bought the big Onkyo receiver. I bought the big old Serwin Vega speakers. Oh man, you should have heard my truck now. They can tell you about my truck. I had the big subs in it. I just lost my mind.
You just described what me and my roommate did when we got Levitt's. You remember Levitt's furniture? When we got Levitt's credit cards.
Man, I'm telling you, literally, man, what ends up happening, especially when you grow up in a poor background, which is something I did, and you don't have a lot of those male figures around. My dad was around, but he was very frugal and didn't say a lot. But my thing was, I wanted to get everything that I thought I might have wanted. My wife gets on me to this day on how much I used to shop. So when you talk about life after professional sports, you better have some people that you appreciate, because that's the only way you're going to listen at that age.
And our guest today is somebody that is doing a phenomenal job and doing phenomenal work with athletes, current professional athletes, as well as former professional athletes. He has done very, very well himself.
Absolutely.
He's going to talk about it. His name is Elliott Perry.
He talks about the blueprint, man. It's the blueprint of how you set yourself up after life.
And you're going to hear all of that after these messages. Don't go anywhere. You got R&R on Sports, and we'll be back.
You better bring your butt back.
It's R&R on Sports.
Hi, I'm Elliott Perry, former NBA player and minority owner of the Memphis Grizzlies, and you're listening to R&R on Sports, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Welcome back to R&R on Sports. Can I do it one time without you messing up my intro?
I'm just trying to help, bro.
Will that ever happen that I do it once without you messing it up?
Listen, just look at me as either Jason Kidd, LeBron James, or any of the great, Steve Nash. I give you assists.
What in the world do you have to do?
I give you a quick no look. All you got to do is dunk at this point.
Can't entertain foolishness. All right, so we're glad to be here. And, we've kind of had an unofficial series, if you will, about life as a professional athlete. And
after you've been taken advantage of by the NCAA. Go ahead.
You can't miss getting that in. So today, we are thrilled and pleased to have with us a former NBA player and now minority owner of the NBA Memphis Grizzlies, our friend from way back, who's been on R&R before.
Bruh, listen, he was like the first guest of R&R back in 2014, our first year. This was our first guest.
And so now he gets to be on Sirius XM and Sports Byline. We're talking about none other than Elliott Perry, EP. Welcome back to R&R on Sports, my brother.
What's up, fellas? How you guys doing?
What's up?
Finally got me back on, huh?
Oh, yeah, man. You too busy, man.
Yeah.
You too busy,
Yeah, we've been trying for a minute.
We've been trying, man. We've been
I
trying.
appreciate you guys having me back on, man. I'm delighted to be here, for sure.
It's our honor, man. It's our honor.
We have been trying. So we want to talk about what we're calling L.A. And L.A. in this case doesn't mean Los Angeles. It means life after. We want to get with you and want you to enlighten us about that part of it. But let's begin with your journey. Let's begin with how a kid from Memphis, Tennessee, Treadwell High School ends up in the NBA, and talk about the journey and the path.
I think it's probably a journey, probably like any other inner city kid. I mean, obviously, you have a dream of making it to the NBA once you start to become a really good basketball player in high school. And, fortunately, I had a lot of people in my corner who, supported me on a number of different levels, from mentors to obviously my coaches in high school and my teachers in high school. And then, fortunate enough to get a scholarship to Memphis State at the time. And, and Coach Finch was really instrumental in really kind of, I think, shifting my perspective from just being an athlete to, being a community leader. I think, two of those things have been instrumental in my life after basketball when we start talking about those things.
Now, tell me this. How early in your career was the prospect of the NBA introduced to you? I mean, was that something always from the time you started playing ball that you thought about as a kid?
I don't think so. I think, probably when I got in high school, started playing AAU, and really started putting my talent up against national players.
Kids, yeah.
So when we started playing AAU tournaments in Washington, D.C. and some other places, and going up against the guys who you hear their names, but you haven't played against those guys, and then Nike ABCD camp and all of those camps that bring together, 150 plus of the best high school players in the country, and then you see how you stack up against those players, and then, you start to think, man, this may be possible. But still, I was a second-round draft pick out of Memphis State, so it wasn't like I was tearing it up in terms of being just kind of a first-team All-American. But, I knew I had one thing going well for me, and that was, the work ethic I brought to the court, the attitude that I brought to the court, and the tenacity, and I wasn't going to back down from anybody. And so, that's kind of how the journey started. And then, just I began to think more and more about, how can I have be effective both on the court and both off the court too.
Okay.
And so I've always said before is the most precious gift God gives you is your time. It's the one thing that you can never get back. Obviously, you can make money and give resources away, and but how could I make a tangible difference off the court too? And that was by giving my time to young people. And so, fortunate enough, I was able to play 10 years in the NBA, and that wasn't just a straight 10 years. I mean, obviously, I had some ups and downs. I mean, I played my rookie year. I got drafted by the Clippers. Played my 10 games after that. I got released. I got picked up by Charlotte. So I finished my rookie year out with Charlotte, and then played a year and a half in the CBA. Played a full year in Rochester, Minnesota in the CBA, and then played 20 games in Grand Rapids, Michigan before I got called up to the Phoenix Suns, and the rest was history.
I don't want us to get too far away from, because you have always been a very, very mature guy and wise beyond your years. I know where that came from, I think, but I want you to share with the audience, especially the impact and influence that your grandfather had on you.
Yeah, I think that's the genesis of it all. I mean, my grandfather had a 4th grade education. I think I mentioned that before. My mom was 15 years old when she had me, and so we lived with my grandparents. And I think one of the things he used to always talk about was there's a such thing as education and then learning. Those are two different things. And he always used to say,
"That's wisdom."
Stuff like what I'm telling you, you're not going to learn it. You're not going to get in a book. A book is not going to teach you these things. And so he had all these different sayings like, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and just all of those little things. And what I've come to realize is that basically what he was saying was there's more than one way to reach your full potential. There's more than one way to reach your destination if you're going for a destination. And so all of those things I've been able to grab onto and hold on to. And then along with obviously my high school coach and my mentor, Michael Tony, who, again, at the age I was in the 5th grade, taught me a lot, exposed me to a lot of things that I was not exposed to coming up in the community that I came up in. So, I give him a lot of credit along with my, my grandmother, my grandfather, my mom, and my family just in general. But I also, I give a lot of credit to Coach Finch too. Coach Finch was really the first coach I had who really started to talk about being an intricate part in the community, being a community leader. And the story is that Coach Finch called me to his office one day. I got out of class. He called me to his office one day. And usually when you go to the coach office, you like, man, what's going on? I know something. I know something. What was going on. So, and our dorms, their offices were right across the street from our dorms. And so I went over. This is before practice, knowing like, oh man, I don't know what I did, and so he started talking to me about being a leader in the community. He think that I have the tools to be at a different level, the disposition to be that kind of person, the attitude to be that kind of person, and really the openness to be that kind of person. It's in a certain level of maturity. Again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying these are some of the things that he was talking about. And obviously I'm 19 years old, so I'm trying to catch girls. I'm trying to think about all the other things. I'm trying to think about, I just crossed, just crossed as a new, I just crossed
one of them.
I just crossed K's side, what I'm saying? So I wasn't thinking about all those things, man. And so, when he started talking about those things in the reach he think that I could have, he said, I want you to meet somebody. And he brought Ben Hooks in to meet Ben Hooks.
My
and so,
goodness.
And I always remember that because Ben Hooks to me was like meeting Dr. King. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, he was talking about the civil rights movement. He was talking about all the things that they had done for us to be able to sit in the seats and go to the schools that we're sitting in. I mean, go to the schools that we go to and, sit in the seats that we sit in. And so that has always stuck with me. And, I've always tried, again, to be somewhat of a community leader, if
and
you will.
Speaking of the movement and your grandfather, we know he has a very special place in that, and we're going to talk about that when we come back for more R&R on Sports after this.
Do I get any type of involvement in this conversation at all?
Later on.
Oh, okay.
After this.
Just let me know when I can talk.
I will.
It's a fight, head bust 'em, head bust 'em. It's a fight, head bust 'em, head.
Riffin' on jazz.
When two friends get together to kick it
about jazz, it's called Riffin' on Jazz.
Catch us riffing on jazz every week right here on your favorite broadcast or podcast platforms.
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Hello, everybody. This is WNBA President Lisa Borders, working with all the good folks at R&R Sports. Let's go.
Back with more R&R on Sports. We're talking about L.A. Life After with former NBA great Elliott Perry and minority owner of the NBA Memphis Grizzlies. And I'm going to let you talk.
Can I talk?
Yeah,
can I talk
in a minute. Just hold
Damn.
on. So, Elliott, as we were saying, we were talking about you being introduced to Dr. Benjamin Lawson Hooks.
Yeah.
And who, like, for you were saying, was like meeting Dr. King. Dr. Hooks was integrally involved in the civil rights movement across the country, and especially the sanitation workers' strike in Memphis. But your grandfather had a very special place in that, and I want you to share with our audience what that was.
Yeah, so obviously my grandfather worked for the city of Memphis. He was not a sanitation worker, but he worked for the city of Memphis in the sewage and drainage department. And so, all of those guys were friends. And so definitely he was in support of the sanitation workers getting a raise at the time when they were striking. And so that iconic picture of the I Am a Man picture that, taken by Ernest Withers.
Right.
You see the gentleman that walks right in front of the frame, and he's looking right in front of the frame, and that's my grandfather.
And he's looking at the camera.
Oh, he's looking right at the camera. So, again, I don't know, it probably wasn't. Well, I know it wasn't planned, but I always say that he was late and he was going to get his sign, but he just was in the right place at the right time, But
so y'all find that photo. It's a very famous photo. Everybody, they're all lined up with "I Am a Man" posters and placards and signs. And the man walking across, looking right at the camera, is Elliott Perry's grandfather.
Now I'm the man looking at the microphone. Can I get a chance to be in this conversation?
I
Drop
guess
him a dime.
okay. Is that all right with you?
Yeah. Assist.
All right, Elliott. So literally, let's go back to your career. Can you tell us some of the pieces of advice or what things changed from early part of your career to late that were marked moments that your career started to make a change based on these pieces of advice or whatever those components were?
Yeah, obviously when you're young, I was just trying to make it.
Right.
I mentioned before I spent a year and a half in the CBA, and just trying to figure it out. I knew I had some talent. All the teams that I was cut on, I always made it to the last cut.
Okay.
And so really,
and how many teams were those?
And that was two teams, two teams.
Okay.
And so while I was trying to make it.
Okay.
And so I think two things in terms of a story, in terms of, just thinking about pivoting. I was trying out with the Portland Trail Blazers. Thought I made the team. Really made it all the way down to we actually had a game the next day.
Oh, wow.
So I got I'm in.
Right.
Yeah.
And about 2:00 in the morning, I get a phone call in my hotel. So I know that's not good. So
not at 2:00 in the morning, man.
And, I think the general manager was like Bucky Buck Waters. I can't remember. I think that's his name. But, he was cool about it. Obviously they liked me and, wanted to keep me, but just got caught up in the numbers or whatever. And,
did you say released. Something like, you could have waited till 8 o'clock or something?
Actually, man, I was like, tell me what flight I'm on so I could get back home.
I can get out of here.
So I can get out of here. And, at that time, we had won the summer league that year with Portland.
Right.
And so I remember in the summer league that summer, Lionel Hollins, who was coaching with Phoenix, asked me, like, who represents you? and that was it.
Uh-huh.
So I just remembered that, it all came back to me. But I got released by Portland, and then a coach named Bruce Stewart had traded for my rights out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Rochester, Minnesota to Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I went to Grand Rapids. Man, we had a killer team in Grand Rapids in the CBA.
Really?
And played 20 games there and ended up getting called up.
That
by the Phoenix
lifestyle is
Suns.
kind of hard,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
This is R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with Memphis icon Elliott Perry. So you were going around and you said there were certain moments when you pivoted. What was the point in which you said, "I've made it"?
I don't think I ever said that.
Really?
To be honest.
It wasn't the point when
felt
Charles
like,
Barkley was carrying you off the court or anything?
Nah. I for whatever reason, I always felt like I was playing on edge. Even though I had a guaranteed contract, even though the money was there, but I just felt like I still I couldn't get comfortable. And I think, for me, I think it all came down to this moment. For me, I would say, before I made the Phoenix Suns, I'm actually trying out with the Phoenix Suns, and man, I had one of the worst in training camp, one of the worst practices I've ever had in my life.
Oh man!
And so the practice was over. I literally, and I used to shoot around, work on my game after practice. I literally went upstairs, took off my clothes, didn't shower or nothing, put on my warm-up suit, and was walking back to the hotel. Like, it's over. I know I'm cut. I never had a practice that bad. And as I'm walking, there was a guy on the street who I had made friends with the year before, who I called him the juggler. And, he would juggle and you put money in his basket. So, obviously I always put a little something in his basket, just having fun with him. And as I'm walking, I see him before me and I'm like, oh, I really don't
feel like this today.
And so I get to him and he always he was so jovial. He was like, hey, he called me Commander Perry, hey, Commander Perry, it's good to see you, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm not with it. I remember this. I pulled $10 out of my pocket, dropped in his basket. I said, like, how you doing? And he said, you know what? Not doing so good today, but you win some and you lose some, And like I dropped the money in his basket, and as I'm walking, it's like God just opened up this light in my head, and I thought like, man, if he could have that attitude when he's home, this cat is homeless,
right?
If he can have the attitude like, hey man, some days you win some and you lose some, you know what I mean? And you live to see another day,
right?
And we were having tour-a-days then, and so I went back to the hotel, chilled. I mean, he had inspired me that, I can have that same attitude. So went back, had the best practice of my life in the second practice that night. And, fortunate enough, I was able to go on to make the team and, get a guaranteed contract after that. And the rest is history. So I used that moment as a pivot, really from this perspective that I was open to hearing and learning at that moment. Because a lot of times when you're going through difficulties, your mind is so closed because you're focused on the whatever that is
and you can't
you're dealing
receive.
with, and you can't receive. And so just being open at that moment. I'm glad I was open. I give credit to God because I know in my own mind I wouldn't have been open because I wasn't open as I approached him. But to give me the opportunity to interface with him.
That's beautiful because I'm always trying to help Howard.
Yeah.
I've always, because his mind is always closed, so I'm always trying to help him understand.
To you.
Keep him right.
God is another thing. My door is locked and the shutters come down.
So let me ask you, what is one time in your career that the advice or from another player or maybe even a veteran player that kind of sticks in your mind, that because I know you had a great relationship with Charles. I mean, that was really big in the media. So, I mean, what type of relationships do you, when you think back on your career, what type of relationships really stand out, or which relationships really stand out?
Obviously, you mentioned Charles. I mean, that relationship, because I think, I wouldn't say as much advice from Charles as it was advocacy. I think, he was always advocating with the front office, with the Grizzlies. I mean, I'm sorry, with the Suns. That I like this. I mean, this guy should be on our team. And there's no question about it. He's
like your hype man.
Exactly. Right? He works hard. He has a positive attitude. He was
your too big MC. Huh?
Exactly, man. And so, from that perspective, that was great. The moments that I remember in terms of advice, some of my greatest advice came from probably Kevin Johnson. I would say is one of the things that Kevin,
former mayor of Sacramento,
spoken to me is when Kevin was hurt. Obviously, I was playing a lot of minutes, and so as Kevin was coming back, he and I play after practice. We just played 1-on-1 as he was trying to get back. Man, he used to just dog me out, dog me out, and But in those moments, we were able to build a relationship and a friendship that he was able to give me some, great advice. And the advice he gave me was, first of all, you got to get stronger. So when you come back to training camp next year, like, man, we just pushing you. These people just pushing you around like a rag doll. So I got stronger. But the second thing he told me really was key is when you come back, you have to leave no doubt in these people's head that you are the backup point guard. And he and I used to say before every game that year, he and I used to say, no doubt, but nobody knew what we were talking about. And so he used to, we always said no doubt. Just in my mind, he was just leaving. Even when I came to substitute for him and he was coming out of the game, he would say no doubt, So basically leaving no doubt in their mind that in training camp, you're their guy. Because you had Winston Garland, who had a guaranteed contract, and so I really was playing for my life. And if we have some time to tell this story, it would be cool.
Well, there's no doubt we got to go to break right now. But you are teaching, my brother. You are teaching. Back with more.
Cool.
Elliott Perry.
That was a cool little segue there. I appreciate
thank you,
that.
Man. I try hard.
Yeah.
I work on this.
Yeah, we keep the practice is working out.
I got to go to break, though.
Go ahead.
Usher, man.
All right, go ahead.
R&R on Sports.
Make sure you flush.
Elliott Perry after this.
David West, Golden State Warriors. Hey, this is Dr. J.
This is Shaq Adocious.
Yo, what's up? This is Ice Cube.
You're listening to a little R&R on Sports.
Keeping it real, right, and funky.
Is this an opportunity that we can seize and express interest from the governor and the state to act on behalf of young people in Shelby County? There are stories that we don't want to tell because they will piss some folks off, make some folk mad.
Funky politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN! This is MJ, and when I'm not in Chicago hanging out with Scotty and the rest of these guys, I'm always listening to R&R on Sports.
Back for more R&R on Sports with Elliott Perry.
That's enough. So Elliott, I want to know, how long were you in the NBA?
10 years.
You did 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years, yeah, man.
Oh, my God.
Fortunate.
What's the average?
I would say now about 4.5 years. When I was playing, it was 3.
Wow.
So obviously the rosters are a little bit bigger. You got the 2-way contract, so you can have two additional guys.
That's recent though. I mean,
I retired in 2000. I retired in 2001. So
it's been
2001,
that long?
2002.
It's been 18 years.
2002, yeah.
So why are the number of years you did. Why are the number of years in the NBA so relatively few? I mean, what shortens them? Injury?
Well, no, I just think you only have really on each team probably 3 to 4 open jobs every year.
Okay.
So most teams have enough guys with guaranteed contracts that they're going to be there or be in the league. And so in those 3 or 4 contracts across the board, with every team, there's only 450 jobs.
Wow.
Those jobs are churning out.
Right.
New guys coming in, new guys being drafted, free agents, G League guys.
Right.
I mean, so those jobs are being churned out. And so, some guys have jobs for 10, 12 years, and some have jobs for, 2.
So that's a perfect segue to where I know you want to go.
No.
Go for it.
When did you know it was over? When did you know for beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is a wrap?
Well, I mean, I would say I probably could have played a couple of more years, but I would have, I'd always been kind of having hip problems a little bit, And
doing that
man,
stanky leg, man.
Doing that stanky leg, man. That last, that last year, we had such a volatile team in Phoenix. That last year, man, we had, Cliff Robinson get in some trouble. Mario Elliott broke his hand. I mean, Jason Kidd got in a domestic violence situation where he had to miss, I think, 10, 12 games, and I had to start those games. And I felt my body breaking down when it had never broken down before. And you find yourself starting to take medication, and I thought, like, man, I'm not about to get on this track.
Right.
And then you just, in the off season, you don't have the drive that you used to have to get up in the morning early and work out. You still try to come into training camp in shape, but my last couple of years, I just didn't have that. That drive, and so you feel like I don't want to do this.
Wow.
So
this is R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with University of Memphis great Elliott Perry.
Memphis State.
Yes. Oh, okay. Well, Memphis State great Elliott Perry. So when once again you knew it was over, and I want to get to ask you one quick question before we talk about your life after. When you look back at the NCAA after your pro career, and you had to expend those 4 years with no pay whatsoever, do you have any thoughts regarding the NCAA? It's what I call the pimp and hoe system, and what's your thoughts on that? Should players be paid?
I think this has been conversation across the board. Right. I mean, I think there are two ways to look at it, and I think one way to look at it is really trying to find the right model to pay guys. Whatever that model is, because I think it's going to be, the Alabama is going to be able to pay guys, much more money. So the NCAA finding that whatever that stipend is, whatever that payment system is it, is it, Larry, your jersey is selling you, so you get a portion of that? Is it, across the board, every athlete get paid the same? Whatever that is. I mean, and do all sports get paid? So in other words,
sports ain't making money though.
But I can say that all sports probably would attest to that. I spend the same amount of time in terms of practice, going to school, so I'm a student athlete as well, even though we're not a money-producing sport. As an athlete on scholarship, we should be getting paid. I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Right.
I think from my perspective, when I go back to my 4 years spent at Memphis State, I'm going to use, in the words of Bonnie Perry, my mom with Coach Finch. Before I signed with Memphis State, I told my mom that night, okay, I think I want to sign with Memphis State. So we got Coach Finch back into our home, before we announced it publicly. My mom said, okay, let me get this straight. Okay. You said, how much his tuition going to be? He was like, $0. She said, okay, how much he's going to have to pay for his books? He said, $0. His housing is going to be paid for, right? These are all the things you telling me. I'm just regurgitating them back to you.
Let me check.
How much?
Right.
$0. What is his meal plan? He gonna be straight on.
You're gonna get eat. You're gonna be
all
eating.
these $0.
Right.
So in other words, what you're saying to me, she called him Larry, is it's not gonna cost me anything, right? Correct. Okay.
Where do I sign?
We got a deal. And so I say all that to say,
and he gonna get a degree
again. Yeah, exactly. I say all that to say is, there's a delicate balance and a trade-off too. I think sports were not where they are today,
right,
in terms of the money that's being made, off the field. I mean, it is NCAA is a big money making machine, and so I just think that. I mean, I don't have the perfect answer. I'm just saying that if my daughter was playing volleyball and she got a full ride to Duke, I'd take that trade-off. If it's not going to cost me, even though I know that's not a money-making sport.
But mine played tennis, same deal, and got a full ride to Southern University.
Right. But see, I look at once again. I look at this kid Zion Williamson, and everybody's made money, but him. So, on R&R on Sports, we keep it real. We keep it real. And I'm saying, I wonder if I believe this kid shouldn't play anymore until he goes to the league.
I disagree on that point.
I disagree too.
Because I'm saying
we have had this conversation.
He needs to get his money because we don't know what tomorrow brings.
You're right.
And if he hurts his knee like he has previously, there's nothing saying that his career and all that income earning potential is not lost.
You have to you think about this too. Is I hoop. I mean, I've been hooping all my life. I play basketball, and that's what I want to do.
Right.
And I think when you, I think there's a point in time where you're starting to see some football players do it where they're not playing bowl games; they're just shutting it down. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's hard to not play because you're scared that you're going to get injured. I say go out and play. I say it's more likely that you would get hurt if you shut it down and your body's not used to it. I mean, again, we play basketball. That's all I've done. I want to play. I mean, I'm going to play in a pickup game. That could happen in a pickup game. That could happen at any moment. And so, and I don't think it's going to hurt his earning potential. I think if he tore his ACL tomorrow, his next game, I think he's still going to be the number one pick. I think he's still going to get the same contract that he was going to get before. I don't think his earning potential is going to be hurt at all.
And this is what we have discussed this, and to your point about what your mother's asked Coach Finch and reached out and shook his hand. It's the principal aspect of it. That was a commitment to the program, the Memphis State program, and that you would go play. I think you finish what you start. I think you make a commitment to. He made a commitment to Duke, and the coach right now they're about to go to the tournament, and I'm saying given a clearance from the medical staff, he should play.
Go play. I know you don't agree with that, Larry.
Man. I disagree.
But I mean, I think if you narrow it down to just money, because money can cloud a lot of things too, and
Absolutely.
so you can lose focus in terms of
we have to, because we know that the degree of a young African American male is not worth the same as a Caucasian male. We know that. There's statistics that show that. This is not Larry Robinson talking. So the fact that you get a degree does not say that this time that you've been pimped for 4 years or for however many years is adequate. The exchange is not adequate.
I don't agree with that.
The exchange is not adequate
because what you also get in that process
is
notoriety.
Keep on interrupting.
You get notoriety. So you got a brother that has been playing ball that everybody has heard of and whatnot, and he's got a degree too. If he can't,
he's not going to get a degree.
What do you mean he's not?
He's not going to get a degree. He's going to leave after. This kid may not even be in school after March. During the March Madness
for a 3 year average,
and he wouldn't be there.
Career in the NBA,
and he wouldn't be there, and he can still go back to school after the 3 years.
But it's a perfect segue into life after. So let's talk about that.
Man, you make me sick, man.
I know I do. You can leave.
I'm leaving.
You got this on.
But anyway, so talk about life after.
Yeah.
Because right now you're doing some tremendous things in terms of pouring your experience and exposures into younger guys that are still yet in the league, and particularly those who are after the league. So, I mean, how'd you know what to do after basketball?
Yeah, I don't think I knew what to do. I just think, everything that I've done after basketball, I think God has kind of ordained a little bit, because I've never put together a resume, applied for a job or anything like that. I mean, it's just God has put me in front of people. But I will say this, though, in terms of life after basketball is it goes back to my going into my junior year in college.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody told me that this was a prominent businessman in the city. He said, man, you meet a lot, because I was meeting a lot of people. I was meeting a ton of people, business people. I mean, down from Fred Smith all the way down to, I mean, all kinds of people being the star at Memphis State at the time.
FedEx,
being the star at Memphis State at the time, and people wanted to talk, and I would always get these business cards, and it never failed. I got back to my dorm room, pull these business card out, dump them in the trash, and the guy told me, starting my junior year is you're gonna have to build your own Rolodex. You're gonna have to build your own relationships in your Rolodex. All those cards you're getting, spend some time emailing those guys back, calling those guys back, and spending 15, 20, 30 minutes with those guys. Most of the time you may talk a little bit about basketball, but talk about life too. How did they get to where they are? Ask some questions, then tell them a little bit about your story, and I think you'll find some synergy there too. And so I just started doing that because I probably could get in most doors. And then when I got in the NBA, I really, expanded on that, getting in more doors. And so, that's one of the things that I talk to young people about, or young players about, is you got to build your own Rolodex. Players spend so much time keeping people away from them.
Yeah.
And I always preface it with this: you got to spend some time playing offense too. Like, you personally have to email that person, call that person, and go spend some time with that person.
It's your brand. You're the brand.
Exactly. And and I think, when a player is comfortable doing that, and I think, building those relationships, because that's what it's all going to boil down to when you get out of the league. When some of those doors close, you need to be able to call on some people that you develop relationships with, and to get into doors, and even to ask questions, and to start the second half of the game. You played the first half. You hoop. You play well. You know how to do that. There's another game being played too, and you need to know how to play that game as well. And then where do I land? What are my mission? What are my interests? What's my mission going to be? How am I going to make an impact now that I'm through playing basketball? You're seeing a lot of players do it, but you're also seeing a lot of players not being able to find their way. And so that's one of the things that I talk about.
So you've become a prominent and prolific art collector, and I know that you have counsel with some other players or former players about that. Talk about that.
I got into the art game by accident too. Charles Barkley took a group of us over to Japan back in '96, summer of '96, and I sat beside Darryl Walker. I knew Darryl all the time, but we didn't have a real heavy relationship. But I knew he played for the University of Arkansas. I knew he played in the league, and he was coaching at the time. And man, he started pulling out these catalogs and books and started talking about art and asking me did I know anything about it. I'm like, man, art. I come from North Memphis. And so, again, 17-hour flight. The more he talked, and I was open to listening. And this goes back to, I was just talking with a young guy yesterday, is being open. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's how you're going to learn.
Oh, listen to you.
And so,
being uncomfortable.
And so, Darryl, we talked a little bit. Then flying back, we talked a little bit more. And when the season started that next year, he would always call me if we're playing in New York, if we're playing in Washington, if we'd be like, EP, I see you're going to be in Washington. Go by Sam Gilliam's studio, and he was always sending me these books. FedExing me these books. I was reading my butt off. And I just started, dropping my bags, going to a museum show, going to an artist studio, seeing all this great art by African-American artists, and thought, 2 summers after that, I saw Dr. Walter Evans, who was a doctor in Detroit at the time. He has one of the best African-American collections in the world. And I saw his show in Little Rock and thought, this it. All the work that I've been reading about, I see it, a person own it. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this for the next 30, 40 years, this is the level that I want to collect on. And so it's been a fantastic journey.
How often do you buy a piece of work?
It just depends. Back in 2004, so we did that from 96 to 2004. I was mostly buying a lot of old school artists, Jacob Lawrence, Elizabeth Catlett, Bearden, Norman Lewis, all of these artists who most of them were dead at the time. And I did a 180 in 2004 to only collect living contemporary artists. And so all the young artists that we collect now, I have a relationship with all of those artists. I'm able to support those artists while they're emerging and build that relationship and then collect the work. And so it just depends, man. Sometimes we go hard in a year, and then sometimes it's 2 or 3 pieces where we're just kind of filling in the gaps.
Larry, he's got pieces that adorn the locker room of the Memphis Grizzlies.
Oh,
wow. Your pieces are all over. It's the offices.
Yeah. It's really their kind of, common space.
Okay, common space. Okay.
Well, listen, see here, this is what you get on R&R. See, we actually have the most amazing conversations. But listen, the only way you're going to hear all of the conversation, you got to get the podcast. And when you get there, you got to rate and subscribe. For those people that give us 5 stars, you might get a little bit more in your podcast than the others. But you got to go to your favorite podcast provider and get these extended conversations. Otherwise, you're just stuck with a little bit.
So y'all go out right now and Google Elliott Perry and see what the brother is doing. Read about it. Elliott, so good to have you back on R&R.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you. We're going to be back at you in the future.
Appreciate it, man.
Know this.
Look forward to it.
We'll be back for more R&R on Sports after this. R&R on Sports is proud to be on Sirius XM.
So what's R&R stand for?
Real talk and relevant sports issues.
It's racial and relative. We're brothers from the South. We can relate.
R&R on Sports on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
David West, the Golden State Warriors.
Hey, this is Dr. J.
This is Shaq Adocious.
Yo, what's up? This is Ice Cube.
You're listening to a little R&R.
R&R on Sports.
Welcome back to R&R. We're back in to go out.
Back, but we gotta go. Gotta go.
Have you ever thought about getting help for your problem?
Hell no.
You need help.
Got no
man.
problem.
You need help.
Listen, bro. Me and Prince went to the same school of
You need a falsetto-ectomy.
A falsetto-ectomy.
But anyway, all that wisdom we've gotten today.
Absolutely.
You got to end it on a better note than
I got to end it on a better note?
Yeah.
What about the note of Q?
Q?
Yeah, like in Quincy.
Okay. Long as it's not the key of Q. But no, this has been a fantastic show.
Man.
It's all about life. It's all about living.
Man, I talked to Elliott at various times, bumping into him around the city. And it's really interesting because he's always the model of professionalism. The brother dresses impeccably. But it's nothing over the top. Just quality, man. Everything about that dude is quality. And
again, the brother has one of the
most respected
collections of African American art
in the country
by African American
artists. But Chris Webber
in the country.
Chris Webber has an artifact. I mean, it's like these guys get into some real cool things. Like you can tell, man, those guys like Chris Webber, those guys like what's the gentleman? Kenny Smith. Those are kind of individuals that seem like, they weren't huge ball players. I mean, shoot, think about the archetype. Just like Junior Bridgman.
Right.
These guys seem very methodical, very process oriented, but also very, very intelligent and skillful and thoughtful. And I'm really impressed with them.
And have achieved in life. And have achieved much. And we want to ask you to please be back with us next week.
Hold on, man. Hold on. Then you're forgetting the big part. Listen, if you missed any of this show and you want to hear it again or want to hear it in its entirety, go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Stitcher, any of your podcast providers, iHeartMedia, anywhere. All right?
Say bye.
What?
Say bye.
Tell me what to do. Bye.
More R&R next week. Thanks for being here.
You've been listening to a little R&R on Sports, written and produced by Howard Robertson, Larry Robinson, recorded and mixed in Memphis, Tennessee.